Introducing first, fighting out of the red corner. He stands 5'3" tall and weighs in at 225 pounds. He hails from Savannah, Georgia, the United States of America. Please welcome UberBear.
Hi, this is UberBear. I don't think this is my right weight class. I'm 5'6", and I am currently 240 pounds. I don't think I'm supposed to be here.
Anthony, tell us, how did you become the Red Mage?
I read CubeCon's Discord and followed all the cubes.
Congratulations.
Did you see my rank?
Your rank: 562 out of 569. Tell us, how did you do it?
I was looking at the CubeCon Discord, and I wanted to just beat my friend Christian, and I didn't actually do that either.
Impressive.
Welcome to UberCube, the podcast we discuss all things Cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams. Just got back from CubeCon. Adams. And we've got the CubeCon aficionado.
Hi, it's me, May, also known as Magic. You'll have to forgive me, I sound a little sick today.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that crud going around. There may have been some notifications. I did come back all clear. I did my test twice now.
Yes. COVID.
I did not come back with COVID, thankfully, but I did end up coming back with something.
Crud. That's real. That's what you win. That's what I think we all won.
Apparently. And this is Stu, and yes, I was unfortunately unable to attend CubeCon this year. Hopefully to be back there next year, but we're back on the podcast train, and let's go.
It was a really fun experience, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But before we do, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube, and we're going to enjoy our refreshments of the show. And we're going to start out with the lovely May, who did the most work at CubeCon.
I don't know about the most work, but definitely more than I was expecting, but that's fine. It's okay. I decided to just keep it simple and have some Wilson's Orchard Blueberry Hard Cider.
Nice. I'm going to be having a combination of a little bit of a 12-year-old scotch that's in Highland Park, and I'm washing it down with a good Hopium IPA.
I might join you on one of those Hopium IPA.
Have one right now,
thank you very much. And yeah, I'm maining right now. This is the 12-year-old Highland Park Viking Honor Scotch. It's delicious. My new daily.
This is the first ounce of alcohol that I've actually had because I have taken the last 4.5 days off because I had a wonderful time. You know, I'm not going to say that primarily explains my 562 out of 569 record, but I believe it was a minor contributor.
That's the story that you tell. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, these people know what they're doing. They know how to cube. They're really great drafters. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the draft experiences and cubes that I had, and a little bit of, we always joke about this. We have this tradition. We stay over at the Home 2 Suites, and people seem to find their way over there after hours. We refer to that as UberCube LobbyCon, if you will, right? And it's always pizza and posting up and having a great time. So if you joined us for the LobbyCon, thank you for joining us, because that was wonderful.
That was always so much fun to me, because you get people wandering over to the lobby with cubes and cases of beer and big smiles on their faces and just enjoying their time, you know. So that I don't want to say I missed that necessarily more than the event, but that was a big part of why I loved CubeCon.
And I want to take a little second here, a little break, to give a shout out for a friend of ours that's got a new podcast. Ian Braverman has just launched Cube Reviews. Episode 2 has just come out. So if you're looking for some more Cube content, I can't preach enough. There's a lot of Cube content coming out now. There's what is it? Recross the Paths. There's LPR. We have Cube Reviews.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of.
You mean to tell me people who enjoy Cube love talking about Cube?
Yeah, you cannot put a microphone in front of the face of a curator because, oh my God.
What are we going to do when we're finally deplatformed because just the sea is it finally raises too high and we just sink?
I'm pretty sure May will just walk around wearing buttons in the local grocery store that'll say, "Ask me about my cubes," so we can get randos in the milk section to talk about our cubes.
Yeah,
But
that would be a way.
yeah, we had a wonderful time though. So we kind of want to do a little bit of an overview. We're probably gonna have to multi-episode this. May and I were talking about this just to try for me to put all my thoughts on paper. After a while, I realized I'm just writing like a mad person.
There's a lot going on in an
it.
event like that, right? A lot of cubes, a lot of activity, a lot of results, a lot of feedback, either, feelings that you have about cubes that you've played, feedback that you've got about your own cubes. So that's a lot to digest, especially like it's only late October right now. So you've only just come back from CubeCon. There's still probably so many thoughts ruminating. So yeah, I mean, break it down as much as you think.
And I'm one of those people, like, I enjoy cake. You like cake?
Not as much as pie.
Do you like cake, May?
I'm in the same boat as Stu. I actually prefer pie.
But I'm a
We're
person
both
that likes
just
to slice a
heathens.
cake.
I'm
I
sorry.
can't sit and eat a whole cake. I saw some of these people, and I do appreciate it, and absolutely no shade. They were just like, I'm on my 25th draft this weekend. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I cannot do that. Like, you know what I'm going to go do? I'm going to go take a nap and drink some scotch by the fireplace. Like, I hit walls, and I just can't keep pressing. Like,
I think the post-CubeCon wall was the one that was most significant for me the last couple of years, because I don't think... Honestly, I played Magic at all for about 3 to 4 months after CubeCon.
Yeah, our buddies got together on Thursday, and I'm like, you people are madmen. I'm not going to play any Magic for a little bit here. I just need a break. I love Cube, and I just cannot. Again, I like a slice of cake, a slice of Cube. I don't want to sit there and eat the whole cube. But let's talk
Unfortunately,
about...
I can't really relate because I spent most of the weekend, just working the information desk and just helping with various events and information keeping and whatnot. But it was also the unfortunate tragedy, because I didn't get to play that much, of every time that I was trying to engage, not force, but engage people to try to play cube with me, then they're like, I don't want to see another cube again at the moment. And I'm like,
I was going to say, have you not just completely redone the Fae Cube already, like 6 times since CubeCon 2024, May? I would expect to have been at least 3 new iterations of that cube, right? It's been a couple of days.
I'm gonna defend you, May. I'm not gonna let Stu do this. Of all the cubes we have, and I have asked a lot of people. No, yours was the one that came back the least amount of any form of criticism. Like, it was just on point. Like, I played your cube this year, and we're gonna have a little bit of conversation about that. But man, It is humming. You have done such a wonderful job of getting that cube to where it's currently at. It makes me want to take Christian's that he has, which is version 1.67 of yours.
I think it's
and
not
throw it in
even
a dumpster fire.
It's the pre-beta version.
Oh my God, your cube hummed, and so much positive feedback from the community. So kudos to you, right? Maybe you're the one that should go in the ring and represent UberCube. I pretty much got my butt kicked.
yeah, so you know that scene in Finding Nemo where the fish finally escape the dentist's office and then they make it into the ocean just sitting in bags, and then they're just kind of like, now what? I feel that ever approaching feeling whenever I'm thinking post this CubeCon with Fae Cube, where I'm just like, great, I did it. I created a balanced cube that nobody had any constructive criticism for.
Yeah, that's it. Lock it down. Lock it. That's it. Finalize it. That is the end of the Fae Cube. No more changes. It's done.
So we had in the running from Team UberCube, we had the Fae Cube, we had the Femme, we had the Monopoly, we had UberBear's Artifact Cube, and we had Sammich's Peasant Cube. And while we haven't really received all the active feedback, I will say just from my viewpoint, the Artifact Cube has always been the one that's been most volatile whenever I take it. I've only changed 2 cards since that, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. But it was minor little tweaks now because I kind of feel the same way. And then I think I have 3 cards that I'm adding to the Femme. And the whole reason why I'm doing that, and we'll talk about that, the feedback was some of the Planeswalkers felt like you couldn't get through to them, like you couldn't actually touch them once they came online. So I've added some unblockable women to the cube that I think will add a new dynamic to threaten them a little bit more, and it's given Blue a new suite of tools. So that's a type of positive feedback, and that is one thing that I want to take a second to talk about. People came up to me and goes, hey, may I have your permission? It was really cool. It's an interesting exchange because they understand that you're walking up to anybody in that room, any curator, right? And there's a lot of feelings and a lot of thought and a lot of time. And the fact that people were so courteous and so genuine with the responses. May I have your permission to provide you feedback, please? Because I have some thoughts. And I love that. Like, that happened more than once. I'm like, absolutely. Like, I wanted to say is you don't have to do that at all, but I also appreciate the fact that it was a lot more human, the exchange, like, and they were really thought out responses. And some of them were more like gameplay status based, you know, emotionally based. I did get a few of those and I did listen to them, but then other ones were like really like holistically looking at the cube and its native environment, and they had like active responses. For example, planeswalkers were a bit impervious outside of hard removal. That's a legitimate thing to notice and say, and I want to be able to attack those without having to just have a large volume of creatures to route around the rivers, right? Unblockable is a good, you can see where that type of feedback is worth its weight in gold. May, did you get any feedback like that? Anything like actionable?
So I did actually have a lot of people reach out to me and want to talk to me about the Fae Cube and what they drafted, what their experience was, and etc. But the only real thing that I was able to leave with was goblins are a little confused at the moment. But like,
I mean, aren't they by birth?
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't that kind of their identity? Goblins, like,
it does come with the territory.
Do they want to get +1/+1? Do they want to get flinged at an opponent, sacrificed? Like, I don't know.
I thought they just do whatever you tell them to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're in a weird spot where they have a bunch of tools, they have a bunch of cool things that they can do, but it doesn't quite feel like their deck quite comes together the way that I like. Because, a little bit of disclosure, there was a few down period times when it was like, okay, there's not really anything clerical to do. We're not really getting anybody like walking through or anything. But I was able to just take a moment to just look through what people are drafting and whatever, and kind of get the overview of what people were doing. And while I was doing that, I just managed to have people come up literally the same time I was looking at their deck and then wanting to talk to me about what they drafted. And it was wild. But in terms of
cool.
a lot of things to walk away with, I actually wasn't left with that much this year.
So what I think we'll do as a focus for this episode is we'll save kind of talking about our cubes and our improvements and, you know, the things that we're going to ruminate on, because feedback is still actually, we're waiting on the tallies to come back in and more of the deck images to come back in so we can make a little bit more assumptions. But I think for now, I definitely played more Cube this past CubeCon than I've ever played at a previous. Stu was asking me, what did I think of it? I don't know what it was. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that my other friends were also going to Cube, because I remember saying, hey guys, let's break off and go to the lobby. Go, no, I'm in the next round. I'm like, well, I don't want to be that bored.
Well, and there was right? We took 5 to CubeCon 2023.
True,
and there was just the 3 of you plus May, and May obviously being big part of the event itself. Unfortunately, I'm assuming you didn't get to play quite as much as you probably would have liked. So that really would have been a big part of why you wanted to probably go there, right? Is to get some rounds in with some of those cubes that you were looking
I enjoy the social aspects of these cons, and to be honest with you, I wanted to go around and kind of see that less than actually playing a lot of cube. I don't ever go there to win. We joke about 562 and all these numbers. I don't care. Like, I literally don't care. I just want to go have a great time.
Like, playing the main event was never my objective, which is the whole reason that I agreed to help out with, like, for related work when I was there, because there are a lot of things that needed to be done, lots of things that needed extra hands, and lots of, let's say, areas that needed a little bit of direction. But ultimately, I am there for the social aspect, and when I can sit down and, like, watch what people are drafting and talk with people and, like, listen to them talking about their deck that they just built or their draft experience and whatnot, and actually hear them be excited about that, that is my bread and butter. That is what I love the Cube community for, and that is what I go to CubeCon for. Me actually sitting down and playing the drafts, yes, that is something I enjoy, but that's not really something that I'm needing for just the main event, if that makes sense. Yeah,
same for me. Like, when we draft, for example, in LobbyCon across the street, I mean, that draft is done in 20 minutes. 25. I mean, we're all, you know, for one thing, we got advantage. We know the cubes typically we're playing, so I get that part. But we're also like fast drafters and also deck building in our minds while we're drafting, right? You're drafting with intent. And when you go into these new cubes in this open field, and it can take an hour and a half to an hour sometimes to do a draft, this is just me talking, and this would be at any event, and it's happened at other ones I've went to. I just kind of check out after a while. Like, that's just me. I just want to get to the playing, right? And by the time the playings happen and I've checked the times, there was multiple times during this event, and it's no criticism. It's the type of cubes I chose. I chose all the weird. I wanted to chase weird cubes, including like the Fae Cube, right? But everyone I picked was kind of the slower formats. And I would have 5 minutes in between the next sign up to the next cube. I didn't eat for 2 days in a row, like no lunch. But everybody else has already had burritos and walking off and coffee. And I'm over there going, oh my God, it's firing at like 11 minutes. I'm like, oh no, again. And it happened over and over again. That's the only thing for me. Like when I go there, I just want to go talk to people. I want to see what other curators, what information they have to share. Because they're, like you said, they'll have the buttons on that says, ask me about my cube. And they'll tell you all about their philosophies and how they came to designing their cube. And that's kind of when I want to roll up into this first one. So on that first day, I was fresh. We'd already driven approximately 16 and a half hours to Wisconsin. We did the straight through on the first one. That was rough. We're never doing that again. We decided as a team. Everyone has time to buy plane tickets going forward. No more of this Anthony rents a van
I don't
nonsense.
mind driving.
Yeah, we're not doing that again. I'm done. I love that ride, but I'm never doing it again. But I went in kind of pseudo fresh for the first one. The first one was actually pretty excited. I put a couple on my list. It was a disaster movie cube, and also the Mad Cube was high on my list. The Curio Cube, which I didn't get to play, which Scott Mertz, we did end up selecting that cube. I couldn't even get in that cube. Like, I don't understand what was happening.
I think that would have been pretty popular.
The Curio Cube was extremely popular.
Yeah. He was undetermined.
A lot of the early rankings and whatnot.
Yeah, I was trying to get.
We'll
in
wait for
cube
that
and
to
I couldn't
actually
get near
released,
it. I mean, like, okay, cool. I feel
you had a lot of competition for the Curio.
I was really hoping I could get like in that cube. Would have been great. You know, that would have been neat. Like, hey, we picked that one. Please let me play that cube. Like, I wanted to go beg J-Bro, but I did open up with the Mad Cube, which is pretty sick. And that's Dan Lupe's cube design. The Madison group has been working on that one. And it's kind of like the way it was explained to me, it's very similar to David McDarby's Live the Dream.
Live the Dream.
And it really did do that. Except my dreams are more nightmares because we're going to talk about this deck I built. This is when Anthony, I say, you know, I'm very serious. Like, I'm going to crush this draft. This is the only time, like on that Friday, and it was the preamble draft, where I had some energy in me and I've already at this point overly caffeinated and lack of sleep. I'm like, I'm just going to crush some people. I'm going to be very serious about this first one because it's worth nothing. It's worth like 1 point. And I didn't actually crush them, by the way, but I tried really hard. But I built basically a deck based on Flicker, and we're going to talk about that. But I went nuts. It was an Esper type control deck, Flicker deck, where I was doing stuff like, for example, Panharmonicon was my engine, and if that stuck, things were going to get really bad. I was doing like Venser locks. I was doing, we're going to call air quotes, Gonti locks, where like, that's your library, but now that's my library, and I'm going to sit there and flicker this over and over again. It was so gross. And then I had like Resto Angel. And then the coolest thing that I got to do, Stu and I pre-gamed about this, and I'll share this. It'll be in the show notes, an image of this deck, and it'll also, coming soon from a CubeCon near you, they will have the images that we can all share. But I did get to saw in half at least twice the Wormcoal engine. Pretty spicy.
That's value.
It is so good. You can even block. And then I'm going to cut this in half and yuck. And yeah, so I did live my version of a nightmare in this cube. And I mean, you can look at this list. I mean, I'm running stuff like the new Otter. It basically looks like a vintage cube, or at least a really, like, it would be a air quotes a 7 EDH deck.
I mean, you've got Memory Lapse and Bitter Triumph and Unexpectedly Absent, Skyclave Apparition, Blade Splicer. Like, to me, a lot of the cards look pretty prototypical of an aggro control, Azorius aggro control
Toxic
with
Deluge.
a little bit. Yeah, you've got Toxic Deluge in there, so you've got those nice control and removal elements in there as well. But the reason why I like cards like this or decks like this is because I can see myself drafting a deck like this, because I'll see Pick One, Pack One, Panharmonicon, and I'm thinking, okay, how do I break this card? What is the rest of the draft looking like where I can take this card and just do bonkers things with it? And that's one of the things that I like about drafting a deck like this with blue and white, is because you get a piece like that, you get your value pieces or your other, your payoff pieces, and then you can just spend the rest of the draft just taking counterspells and removal.
Yeah, once I got that Panharmonicon, that was the only thing that was difficult in this cube, is that in my colors I was in, the ramp was not really necessarily present. I was able to get like Coalition Relic, but to get to Panharmonicon did take me time, and a lot of times that put me on my back foot. But once my engine came online, then I could start living the air quotes dream and doing Yeah, Venture locking someone's a little miserable. I enjoyed every second of it, but my opponents, I don't know if they were.
So
loving
let me sort of play like the outside looking in on this, right? So I look at this deck and I think, okay, this looks super fun. You've got those pieces, you've got your engine, you've got your control pieces. How does this fit within the rest of the cube as an example, right? Because I don't know what your records were or what other decks you were facing, but now how does this fit in with the rest of the cube, right? And maybe that's something that you would like. We can talk about this if you like, or we can move on to another cube, but these are the kind of thoughts that I have when I look at the lists that you're presenting, right? So how does this compare to, as an example, an aggro deck or another kind of combo deck, right? So how did you feel this fit in with the rest of that 40,000 foot view?
Yeah, I don't know the whole deck list. I looked at it briefly. I actually tried not to. I think the only deck list I actually looked at was the Disaster Movie Cube, because Dark Pink Hippo. I think I got that right.
Great name.
Amazing name. If I got that correct, but like I was excited about the Disaster Movie Cube, which was just kind of my wheelhouse. So I was excited about the card choices and selection, all that. So I breezed upon that. But these other cubes, I kind of wanted to go in blind, and this was more fun. Like I see Panharmonicon, and I can't remember when I picked that, but I think I opened up pretty much with like I started seeing signs of blink, right? And I got a pretty good curve, so it really signaled to me. But I did find myself on the back foot from pressure decks, like not even aggro, but as we talked about, creatures turning sideways made it hard for me to do
That's pretty aggro.
Well, it's because the mana intensity of the type of deck that I'm trying to do here without me having any shortcuts.
Yeah, because Panharmonicon's what, 4 mana?
Yeah, so it took me playing that almost on curve, and then I could maybe execute. It was a very engine that had to get cranked up to start. And that's the problem with this type of deck, because I didn't have anything like I didn't see any signets or any talisman. They may have been in there, and I'm uncertain, and Dan can correct me on that. But I didn't have a way to shortcut, at least not in the cards I got. So the only shortcut I had was Coalition Relic to try to get me into range so I can get out of that. Because creatures are coming at me, whether it's little small critters or whatever, and they're just knocking me down.
Well, I think this is where we've gone back to the whole like aggro is the police of your cube, right? So this is kind of a common statement that we've talked about, and other cube creators have mentioned, is that they see aggro as kind of a police kind of deck, right?
I think it's necessary.
Well, yeah.
We're going to talk about that in a future episode. We're going to argue about that
absolutely. But certainly with decks like this, again, how do you compare with a deck like this at the speed that you expect it to run, right? So you've got Memory Lapse, that's 2 mana interaction, as well as Bitter Triumph. And obviously there's other 2 and 3 and 4 mana interactive spells that you've got with this, right? But if you are only casting one spell on turn 2, and then maybe one spell on turn 3, and then maybe on turn 4 you're looking to get your engine online, you don't really have any pressure up until that point. Yeah, you maybe have had some impact on the board, but if you've got your aggro deck that's been able to put, one spell out on turn 1, 2 spells out even on turn 2, or one spell and then 2, so now you're facing, like, you've done maybe 1 or 2 things in the first couple of turns.
Yeah,
they've done 4 game actions, put 4 spells out, put maybe 2 or 3 creatures out, depending on what their deck construction is. So how did, and maybe that's something you can comment on.
I think Dan and the group's choices, I think what we're looking at here, if I were to take this and add some fast mana to this almost steps into an unfair deck range.
Right.
And by me not having access to the fast mana outside of Coalition Relic, I think it made this a fair deck.
Well,
and
ramp
more
is
balanced
ramp
to the environment
as well. Like, ramp is so, especially anything colorless is going to be pretty universal.
Yeah, I
don't think you can always say, hey, I'm going to put ramp in my cube, certainly in the form of colorless ramp, in order to generate an advantage for a deck that wants to play big spells, because then any deck is going to want to take advantage. Coalition Relic is a great example, right? It's a 3 mana artifact that can tap to store a mana like a battery, and then can tap for a mana as well. So it's a great advantage for your turn 4, turn 5. But again, it's as much as it might be great for your deck, how many other decks are just going to want to pick this up as a great value piece?
Yeah, it was very much contested. But I think this is the only way you could really make this deck fair. And that I do appreciate. Like, this is a very powerful deck, and I think them toning it back. One compliment I do want to give before I pass the ball here to May is I really love the Surveil lands. And I am, anybody that's not running Surveil lands at this point, every cube that I run them in, oh my God, I'm in love with them. I am putting them in every cube because that card selection with a deck like this,
I love them so much.
amazing.
I put one in a commander deck that I've never played and maybe will never play again. So that tells you how much I love the Surveil lands.
Never
They're
tried again.
incredible.
May, what are your thoughts on this deck before we move on? You see what I'm trying to pull off here?
Yeah. So the content of the deck, I think I agree, is in a pretty strong state. However, I actually have more of a, let's say, play state dependent question. When you went into this cube, did you have a lot of relevant information when you sat down to understand what to expect in this environment, to know that that you would have room to work this type of deck and that this type of deck would be doing a powerful thing?
No. I lean towards the vintage cube cards, which sometimes can be, we've had conversations about that, the contextualization of certain cards, where I see them coming around, like say Memory Lapse. Memory Lapse is, hard to argue a great card, right? And the same thing with Skyclave Apparition. These are just fantastic cards. And if I take those, there's no setback for me to take those cards. I'm not de-incentivized from taking those cards. It was later in the draft where I started seeing these little micro synergies. Obviously, Panharmonicon screams, oh my gosh, I picked that up. I picked Panharmonicon up, I want to say like pack 2 maybe, right? And then I'm like, oh my God, yeah, we're going to start ETBing all the day here. And the next one that actually was fascinating is I saw Wormcoil Engine thinking like, how am I going to win? That was the question I'm asking myself. At one point, I'm just blinking things for value, not sure how I'm going to win, like with the Skyclave, for example. What is my end game here? And then Saw in Half came around. I'm like, oh, there it is. I'm going to do some nonsense now. So the Live the Dream portion of the cube kind of came secondly to me. Whereas not knowing the cube, I leaned into, I know this is power, vintage, playable type cards, right? And
Sure.
They didn't lie to me. The cards didn't lie to me. But the type of deck I was in required a lot of ramp because this was so mana intensive that it would almost be like it was turn go, right? I was pass going nonstop, but not because necessarily I wanted to. Like Vincer locking was really hard here.
So I just mentioned it because a thing that you might not have recognized just from like the draft itself, rather than just knowing what you're getting into with the environment, is actually the curve of this environment is actually mostly around that 3-drop, 4-drop section. And most of the, let's say, impactful cards are going to be starting to come out later on compared to what you would expect, aggro decks to keep that your kind of deck in check with. And it's not to say that I'm sure somebody could try to draft an aggro deck in here, but the density very much is inclined to favor decks that go into later turns in that courage that live the dream environment, like you were trying to say. And I think that is an interesting dichotomy from what you were experiencing from the draft, going in blind and trying to pick up that information as you went and just drafted what cards that you thought were extremely powerful for the environment. That also just happened to line up for what the environment was properly balanced to do.
Yeah, so that was one of my goals for the weekend, and that explains my loss rate. And I told people when I'm sitting down at the draft.
Hang on, whoa,
test the cubes.
Slow down for a second there. You cannot just slide in.
I thought 562 was great.
You cannot just slip in.
Isn't that a great number?
Explains my loss rate or my rank. When you're,
I wasn't playing hard. I wanted to
that.
test things. I wanted to flesh things out.
Fair enough.
I wanted to know because this is not a good example of my intent. Like I built Esper because I'm going to laser focus laser eye. So I realize what I'm saying is contradictory to what I'm saying. But this next cube that we're going to talk about, kind of where you can actually talk about like what I loosened up the reins now. Now I'm tired, and that first draft I kind of went in like I'm going to Esper control and I'm going to do the thing I'm comfortable with. This next cube is actually the one that Morgan, this is yours. This is the cube that, frankly, I was most excited to play. Like, this one pulls in my heartstrings, and it was a disaster movie cube, which I will share in the show notes, and everything about this cube just, like, screams a type of, I guess, curation and cube philosophy that I love. Everything I love about cube is in this cube. Like, I remember when I first saw this cube, May, and it was on the list in the polls, and I'm scrolling through. If I've ever felt envy or jealousy or anything, I'm like, man, I wish I had built this cube. Like, this cube is sick.
So,
the idea is sick.
This was actually a cube that I heard a lot of positive feedback with. It was extremely popular in terms of its ratings. A lot of people really actually wanted to come back to this cube as well. I think she did a really good job with curating this and seeing its vision and really executing it well. So I just wanted to give that a quick mention.
100%.
Let me tell you why I love the cube. Not even just your deck, why I love the cube, even just looking at the image of your deck. First of all, fetch lands, fixing, love that. Secondly, there's a lot of foiling on this, right?
It's pretty.
A lot of foil, a lot of pretty, a lot of care, a lot of
Aesthetically,
attention.
this cube is gorgeous.
Aesthetically looks absolutely spectacular. Number 3, cards that just look like so much thought and so much fun has been considered when wanting to put a cube like this together, right? It takes someone brave to put Throes of Chaos in any cube, and it's in this cube, right? Lord Windgrace. So I called this Catboy. So anyone with kids, I'm gonna call this the PJ Masks deck or cube, whatever you want to say. But there's so much to love, even just looking at your deck. And I very, very briefly glanced through the cube list when you show me this. I'm seriously thinking if there's ever a cube that I'm going to clone and maybe not even make any changes, but just to play, it might well be this cube, because there's just so much to love about everything that's going on aesthetically, card choices. Throes of Chaos is a white border card. Like
that's a special edition of it. They found that from was that Gavin's.
I don't care what your cube is, but if you have white border cards in your cube, it's automatically the best cube of all time.
So this cube
automatically.
It had, like, what I like about it, it's thematically present. It had a bit. It does, by its virtue, and this will be said, and I'm going to kind of give the core elements, and I will share this in the deck list, but I went for a Lands Matters theme. And the whole kind of concept that I was building around was the card Reprocess, which I will include in the show notes. Reprocess basically says you can sacrifice X amount of lands, draw X amount of cards. And what I wanted to do is use that with Titania, and Titania. I'm from Georgia. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of have this, like, reprocessing and then bring the cards back. I was thinking with, like, we'll say Ramanap, Excavator, etc. And just, I wanted a Crucible Worlds. And also I had an Ob Nixilis the Fallen that got really big and just started hitting people for 3. Like, there was some silly nonsense in here. But and Morgan, this is the only piece of, like, constructive criticism that I might offer, if I will, and we can talk about this offline too, feel free to reach out to me, is I was actually found myself, because I'm leaning into the theme of the cube, and which is vibrant and beautiful and has fixtures, there were definitely some extreme power outliers that I knew were unbeatable from, and maybe they're not, it's contextually driven, but like cards like Kappa Cannoneer, or let's just say like Nissa that shakes the world. These type cards were very difficult for me to play against. I actually cut Kappa. I took it out of the draft. I actually cut a landfall deck. And I announced to the table, I'm like, "You're welcome, table. I got Kappa Cannoneer. I have no intentions of playing this card." And I didn't mean that as like a slight or anything. I just knew, like, I've played this card in a Powered Vintage Cube, our good friend Sammich's recently, and had 2 Kappa Cannoneers coming at, attacking into him. There's nothing he could do about it. And I just didn't think it would be healthy for the draft environment. But that was just my personal choice. I really love Lands Matters, and I leaned into it so hard that I'm running like Worm Harvest, dude.
I got one question.
Digging deep.
I got one question. Is it in the cube? If so, if not, if so, whatever. Where is your Life from the Loam?
I didn't see it. And that brings up another thing that I kind of saw. Well, you're right. And this is another thing that I did.
Well, you said there was a couple of other Lands Matters players,
there
right?
were 2 more Life. So
Life from the Loam is just such an iconic and just absurdly powerful Lands Matters card, right? So if that's in there, the first question I have is, and this is not just to you, this is to the Cube Curator, because hopefully they're listening, and right, and we're going to put this out there to them. If Life from the Loam is in there, and if you have this many cards in your cube that support a Land Matters package, Life from the Loam almost just seems like such a pick one, pack one-able card.
Yes.
That, like, if your record was good,
they've got the new Crucible room. I had that in here.
Sure,
and I've got Gitrog Monster.
You've got
I've got Titania.
Did you see Renin 6?
No, I don't think they went that power level. But what was interesting about
you can't say they went that power level.
Their power level is a little
Faithless
mixed. There's a
Looting
little
is in
mix.
here.
Like it's a little mixed. It was a mixed bag. It was just
Kappa Cannoneers.
this cube was
Fetchlands.
so fun to draft. It was insanely fun to draft.
It looks it.
But whenever I'm sitting across, like the one observation, yes, I'm the air quotes like true lands matters. My opponents had like OG Garuk, so they're untapping their lands, cards that I would have liked to have had in mine, or Nissa that shakes the world at another opponent that I would have liked to have had in mine. It had a very like contextually it looked like a lot of players were competing with me in a lands matters type suite. It seems like lands matters is pretty dominant in this cube. I could be wrong or off base in that statement, but I felt like I thought I had the perfect lands matters deck, but then I got beat by like better lands matters deck. Overall though, this is still my favorite cube of CubeCon 2024, like hands down. Like this cube is just so well crafted, and I just want to see it get better and better because this was gorgeous. Did you ever get a chance to check out this list beforehand, May? You mind pulling up this
No,
list?
I did not. I did not even get a chance to play it yet. But, never say never. I'll get my opportunity to, so...
I'm with Stu. I would love to recreate this list. Like, this list is just, like, on par for the type.
I think I'm doing it. I think...
One that I've heard a lot about.
For those that aren't familiar with this list, as Stu pulls it up, like, the whole bit is, like, the end of the world. And it's, like, robots and sea serpents. And my Pack 1 Pick 1 was Mole God. I mean, it was just nonsense. And I love everything about it.
So there is no life from the loam. There is, I mean, you say Garuk, I say Garruk. I mean, whatever. There is a prime time.
I say Titania, you say the correct way.
Correct, Titania. But there are definitely a lot of cards that are very lands matters centric, and a lot of green ramp in there as well.
Yeah, and prime time and all that. It didn't feel. That would be my only like.
This almost feels a little throwback, and let me tell you why. Right, the Green's identity for such a long time was that pay 3 mana, go and get a land or two, pay 2 mana, go get a forest, that kind of stuff, right? I feel like the popularity of that, even though it's such a massive strength of Green, right? Those 1 mana dorks, the 2 and 3 mana, go get a forest, go and get a couple of basics, whatever. Maybe there's not just a throwback to a time where that was good, but maybe that's coming back into the forefront of that's such a ludicrously powerful effect to continue to ramp yourself, and especially in any kind of lands matters where you might be able to either, it doesn't matter if you're trying to cast big things or you're trying to get specific fixing or you're trying to do your Titania thing, right? Obviously, things like Prime Time are going to be crazy strong for that, as well as Titania, as well as Ren and 6. Maybe you've got Strip Mine, maybe you've got Wasteland. That is a crazy amount of support. But some of those fundamental pieces do seem to be missing, right? I do love it, yeah. So you've highlighted Overlord of the Baelmerk. This is a 3 colorless, 2 black enchantment creature, avatar horror, has impending 5 for 1 and a black. Whenever Overlord of the Baelmerk enters or attacks, mill 4 cards, then you may return a non-avatar creature card or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand.
Yeah, it's amazing. I got to pick one of these up. I love everything about this card. The only piece of
the impending is so good.
I love this card. The only thing that I would like to see, because this is an end of the world type scenario, right? Everything's happening. There's a couple of cards that I would like to see in here, and this is just my personal flavor opinion. I would like to see some zombies, but not like, I don't want OP zombies, but I want zombies kind of in my end of the world scenario. We got robots and we got sea monsters and we've got all this stuff, right?
Well, let's be clear, right? If
that would be my thing, like an aggro package.
I would agree. I would agree 100%. Specifically talking about your deck and about the lands matters, there is no Ren and 6. There is no life from the loam. You've got 3 people battling for this lands matters package. I'm looking at the rest of the draft, and I'm looking at the rest of the list or the rest of this cube, and I'm thinking the amount of support for so many different ways to build decks. You could go lands matters with multiple colors. You could go aggro. You could go your control. This is a list that I think I want to highlight this maybe more than any other deck that we've ever talked about for any event, because I think it has an incredible amount of potential. I'm building this cube. I'm building it.
This cube is fun as
Staying
hell.
right now.
Like
It's
the
happening.
card reprocess, it was like the card that got me so excited, Morgan. I just want to say, like, holy cow. I love this card. I didn't even know it really existed. But for 2 colors and black, you get a sorcery. Sacrifice any number of artifacts, creatures, and or lands. Draw a card for each permanent. Sacrifice this way.
You don't have this.
I kind of
even
want them
in-
an artifact.
You don't
cube
even
now.
have this in a commander deck. I'm surprised.
That card is awesome.
I have this in at least one commander deck.
Yeah, so I think if I'm in an end of the world scenario, I would like to. I'm not talking about like your fast zombies. I just would like to see some chunky zombies, right? Something that's kind of mid-rangey type zombie stuff to kind of threaten a little bit, like the end of the world scenario. But I think it's great because I like how they didn't intentionally balance. And one of the cards too, I want to highlight. Which one was that?
So what? Look at this. Look at this go down. Field of Ruin. You want to get your end of the world nonsense going on where zombies are just kind of taking over the world? There it is.
Yeah, Field of the Ruin actually is pretty great for this lands matter circulation type thing. I'm
going to guess that someone built around that card.
Yeah, it's like a wasteland at home type thing scenario, and eventually they're going to run out of those cards. I mean, May, this cube is amazing. Do you have any thoughts on it? It's just I'm in love with this cube.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of thoughts because I haven't gotten a chance to play it. But like I said before, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about it. A lot of people were really excited before and after getting to play it.
Yeah, it may work the whole event.
Morgan, please put this in for CubeCon 2025. This is for me. This is what Cube is all about.
I don't know where Morgan is located, but for UberCubeathon 2025,
I would love to see
we're
this
getting this
UberCubeathon.
cube on.
This cube is sick. All right, let's move over to the next list.
All right.
Thank you, Morgan.
The next one is our very own
May.
It's the Fae Cube. Hi, May.
May, I don't have a
That's
deck list
me.
here, but I want to talk to you about a little, like a dichotomy that kind of happened. I remember I was texting May in the middle of this event, and I'm like, I've got the, was it Arnice package
That's
going on?
cheating.
Yeah.
You can't contact the cube.
I did.
Created during the
I may
draft.
have. I'm like, look at this. This deck is sick.
I did not provide any helpful information.
Oh, thank you for telling me the cards to put in the cube, by the way, in the deck. But no, it was absolutely just a gorgeous, gorgeous cube. And like you said, I wanted to do the Parties Matters because I've never done Party. And the year prior, I actually got my teeth kicked in by Party. And no, I did not communicate with May. But I did send her a picture of what I've built, and it was pretty fantastic. What was interesting, May, that the occurrence that happened to me, this is probably a pilot issue, but ultimately the party deck got completely shredded by Brian Stoutarm. Do you want to tell us what Brian Stoutarm does, please?
Yeah, so Brian Stoutarm is a giant warrior for 2 red and a white. 4/4 with lifelink. You can pay a red and tap it to sacrifice a creature other than Brian Stoutarm, and it deals damage equal to the sacrifice creature's power to target player. So it's kind of fling on a body with lifelink, which is enough to blow people out of the water in this kind of format. And it came up a couple times as very powerful addition to some people's decks.
Yeah,
But-
don't ever cut that card. And the reason why I'm going to say that is because another player 3-0'd with the exact same, virtually the same deck as me. And
Yep.
Brian Stoutarm cut me to pieces like I was a bunch of slivers. Like, it just dismantled me. And I wasn't mad about it, May. Like, that, to me, is an essential part of the balancing of your cube and what makes your cube so great, is that I talk to you all the time. I know what we've talked about, that the party mechanic was OP the year prior. I mean, I couldn't have possibly more home field advantage than any other person. And then to get completely shredded by this amazing, like, wild card that Brian, oh my gosh, like, you can't bottle that if you wanted to. So I was so impressed. I'm like, I'm going to die, but it's really cool that I'm getting dismantled by this, like, obscure card. And I love the fact
I don't think Brian is that. In fact, Brian is not an obscure card.
It's a commander card.
It is
it's
a commander
cutting
card.
me to pieces.
But that is
and
not.
it was so cool.
It is very cool. It is very cool.
Like, to me, that's a testament, May, to how well you've curated this cube. Like, I'm piloting what would perceive to be the most dominant deck, and I'm getting beat to pieces by what we consider to be like an age-old commander card. And I just think you've balanced that so well. And I really wanted to compliment you as I'm even losing and like, you know, against the chagrin of what I'm doing. I mean, wow, just wow. You've done such a great job.
Thank you. I definitely feel like that this year was a lot more of a testament to Fae Cube's kind of self-regulating balance in a way that the previous year didn't really get the chance to showcase. But for context, while you got completely trashed in your draft, literally the next draft was a 3-0 from a party deck. And the thing is that I didn't gut party. All I did was improve the tools for the other decks to have, so that way they can kind of play at a similar playing field.
I agree with that. Like, that was your philosophy that I've kind of started approaching some of my cubes with, where you said, like, a certain archetype is dominant, and opposed to, like, air quotes, cutting that one back, instead give the others the tools to combat that deck, I think is an interesting philosophy that I have learned from you. So, yeah.
It was proven correct this year.
It was.
Every 3-0 draft that happened with the Fae Cube was a different deck.
Correct.
Every one was a different deck. 2 decks that were similar, but not quite the same. And it came down to 2 of those decks. It was Golgari Elves Whatnot versus Selesnya Elves Whatnot, where it was a similar Abzan package with these elves, Wolves, Whatnot, but they were on 2 different splashes of that spectrum. So it was nice to see a good variety of decks this time, and it really felt like that things had their own ways of self-balancing this year in a way that I really appreciated. The big thing that I was really happy about this year was I managed to run the Fae Cube on Sunday, completely outside of the main event draft, and I actually had my behind handed to me by the Countryside Crusher deck.
Really?
It finally happened. Somebody went
It happened.
second.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it happened. They got second place.
So,
like, that deck can tear people to shreds. I was very pleasantly surprised on how well that deck performed.
all right, I want to ask you about the commonalities between the decks that 3-0'd. Do you look at those decks? And I'll extend this to both of you guys, right? So looking at the decks that either very well performed or even the decks that underperformed, are you looking for those commonalities between the decks that either, 3-0'd or 0-3'd, probably what both have, and see what was common between them? Can you provide any feedback? I know, again, this is very early, but was there something that maybe stuck out in those draft choices when it came to either the overperforming or underperforming decks?
Well, as I mentioned before, even though I had inside information on the Fae Cube, I really wanted to test the validity. That was my whole purpose here, is like test theory of cubes while I was enjoying the cubes, right? Like Pack One, Pick One, Mole God, and the Disaster movie, etc. Well, in the Fae Cube, I wanted to try to do the party mechanic. So I did do Orzhov Party. And it was just fascinating to me that while the deck on paper looked like it was impervious, it appeared impervious. Like, it looked like if I handed this to somebody that was better than me, like, I don't know, LSV or something like that, they would have crushed souls with this. Maybe it was a pilot error, but ultimately, when you take something like where she smartly increased, like, the tools for other decks, Brian Stoutarm, for example, and allowed other decks to push back against the most broken deck that was, was it Adventures and Party was kind of the pronounced staples at the time?
Yeah, so we had Teamer Adventure from last year, which it came up this year, but it was not nearly as dominant as it was in the previous year. We had Fairies, just because the Esper Fairy type decks, I will call them, tends to perform pretty well, but they weren't as super predominant as they were last year. Orzhov Party was the biggest one, as we've mentioned before, but Orzhov Party is still kind of retained its spot as kind of top dog in this environment, but not in a way that's as oppressive as it was before, just because now there are so many other ways that people can really push that, let's say, their card advantage engines or their deck efficiency, their value engines, and how well that they actually drafted the deck that they were trying to build for the mid-rangey, flexible atmosphere that I was trying to curate. It felt like that a lot more of these hyper-focused, aggressive decks, like in the case of Orzhov Party, not that they were pushed out by any stretch, but they finally have met their matches in a way that I appreciate.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Like, the balance was there. I want to kind of transition over to, I during this event, actually did 4 cubes in the main event. And the last one I want to talk about is Dragons of Winter's Night, which is another one of my favorites. Like, it was one of my favorites from last year.
Friend of the show.
Yeah, I had to play Chill's cube. I just had to, because he's worked so hard to, like, curate this cube. And what I had more fun, like, May, announcing this cube to the table. I'm like, I know we're just drafting a desert cube, sure. But you have to understand, there is an entire world that all of you are about to unlock with these. When you open these packs, you're now opening a world. And I need you to see yourself as like a frozen wasteland survivor. And you literally have to now find all the tools you need to survive in this impending doom, if you will. This location, this plane that Chill has made, that dragons are now dominant, and that you have to find the survival skills, find the components you need to make it through the... Dragon's Lance was what kind of inspired this cube. And I was so impressed with how this cube has kind of grown and gotten better. And I really wanted to actually play some dragons this time, because I think the last time I approached this cube, I did the KCI combo the year before. And this year I wanted to kind of like, I'm intentionally not going to do artifacts, even though some got fed to me. I wanted to actually like make some big derpy dragons happen. And boy, did I. I also misplayed, and we're going to talk about it on a future episode. Do you know that Dragon Hunter has protection from dragons?
Hang on. You misplayed?
Yeah. Did you know that Dragon Hunter has protection from dragons?
Yes, I did know that.
I did not, because Kolagon attacked and got blocked by a 1-1 or 2-1? 2-1, right?
I think maybe a 2-1. Yeah, I think it is a 2-1.
Yeah. Another card that I actually misplayed because I had fun with the judge and talking to the table. I've never played Scion of Draco before.
Fabulous card.
Well, I didn't know it reduced by 2.
Yeah, it does.
It does say that on the card.
It does say that.
I didn't have
my
reading
card.
glasses.
Reading the card really does help.
You know how many times I had Scion of Draco in my hand that I could have cast it, and I didn't? Because I thought that it was only reducing by 1. Oh my gosh. But like the deck I built here was just mostly just grabbing all the talismans. I just wanted the perfect mana system, which I feel like I accomplished.
So you're drafting mana rocks and building a domain deck.
Yes.
Okay.
And I wanted to lean into it so hard. Scion of Draco, and then misplayed Scion of Draco, like, so bad. But I had so much fun drafting this cube. I mean, it's just absolutely, like, the Vorthos on this cube just screams at you while you're playing it. You can't not see yourself in this winter wasteland.
But you've got Ebon Death Dracolich,
which I won with once. I pointed at it.
I know, you've got a big red arrow in the show notes.
I
of
did.
This card, like, hey, highlight this card, please. It's right next to O-Ring and Varagath and...
the card is good.
Chill to the Bone and Crippling Chill and all these other funky, like, night and cold and desolate and desperate kind of cards that are definitely a big part of this cube. Like, there's so much fun in this cube.
So yeah, I wanted to ramp out to giant dragons, and I got stuff passed to me like Vampiric Tutor, and I'm like, sure, okay, I'll accept a Vampiric Tutor.
Vamp Tutor is a great card. It's normally only as good as the next best card, or maybe the best card in the cube. But in this case,
it is the second copy of that best card.
It is a second copy, exactly. And if you're looking to ramp into a card like Ebon Death Dracolich
or Kolagon. That's what I did every time. Like, literally, I'm like, yeah, I'll have one of these too, please.
It's pretty hard to say no to, right? And I'm gonna make a statement right there for all of us Magic and Cube aficionados, right? We're not just Cube lovers. We're Magic. We're Magic players, right? We love Magic. We love everything about Magic. Or hopefully you do. Casting big dragons is fun. I don't care what format you're playing or what you're trying to do. If you've got the opportunity to just do something that puts a big dragon onto the battlefield, under your side of the board, there's something just so ultimately satisfying about that.
And you can see that I'm always an Esper player. Like, that's kind of my jam. I went into that again. And I actually got beat by Gruul, but I love
Do you know
Esper.
why? Because Esper's the best.
I love control.
The Esp is the best.
Yeah.
As Jim Morrison said, 60 years ago, he said the ESP is the best.
He did.
Okay, so trust.
Jim Morrison didn't let
and
me
the
cast my
Doors.
Ojutai that I wanted to do the solo winter.
Well, he was in He was in Paris at that point.
That was
so
true.
we'll
That
ignore
was
it.
true. Actually, gotta go see
But
that
like these are the kind of card choices that again make cubes like this so much fun, right? Ebon Death and Ojutai, and those are your big stupid creatures, and then you've got the reality chip. Like, what a fun card that makes for some fascinating play lines. Vampiric Tutor. Got a lot of talismans there.
Yeah. I actually picked that up from our good friend Thomas, who recently drafted my Power Cube. And they were kind of just getting talismans past him left and right. And the whole idea is that if you take the talismans or take the signets and you just like completely monopolize this idea, you can cast anything you want. And I thought it was such an interesting like draft dynamic. And he is, I guess, a terror in the Raleigh-Durham area as far as like winning the most. And that deck building philosophy of just grab all the big manas.
I mean, at
do
worst,
anything you want when you want.
Yeah, at worst, it's 2 mana. You've got a rock that taps for 1 colorless for no pain whatsoever. And then at best, depending on your outlook, you've got something that, all right, it costs you a life when you tap for it, but it can fix your mana. Like, there's a reason why the talismans have so outpaced and outclassed the signets. Like, this is something that we've talked about in previous episodes. Why are there so many curators that are moving away from that signet obsession that I love the signets back in the day, but the talismans are amazing.
I hold the signets in my artifact cube. We'll talk about that in a future episode.
You should.
There's a reason for that.
You absolutely should.
But otherwise, yeah, I've transitioned to that too. But like this cube, from the Vorthos perspective, I mean, just chef's kiss.
When you have an environment where a lot of your cards are going to be big stinky dragons, having cards that are colorless that get you there is going to be extremely powerful in this environment. And I think that when it comes to the talisman versus signet argument, this deck is kind of a testament to why talismans have the power that they do over signets. I'm glad that it seems like everybody had a wonderful time at CubeCon. I'm really happy that I got to see a lot of the decks that people came up with. Hopefully, y'all being the listeners, not Anthony Stu. I've heard a lot of Anthony and Stu today. But y'all being the listeners should send in your deck lists and the decks that you drafted and the experience that you had in CubeCon, so that way we can actually get a chance to hear it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I appreciate the opportunity to play all these different cubes. And we will have episodes coming very soon where we're going to talk about the feedback and what we have and the changes that we have made to our environments that were submitted during CubeCon 2024. So thank you for listening. And this has been wonderful. Like, CubeCon did everything that I expected and more. It was wonderful. And I'm hoping I can convince Stu to come back next year. It was fantastic.
I will. I do plan on it. So again, from me as a, I kind of take the position of the drafter and the analyst of the cube information as a player. I want to hear from all of our listeners, and tweet at us, message me, post on the Discord. What were the cubes that you enjoyed playing the most, and why? Why were the cubes so fun that you considered that, right? What did you love about them? What are the archetypes that you're looking for? What makes you as a cube player tick? And which boxes were ticked the most by the cubes that you played? Because for me, I have sort of definitely changed myself as a player of Magic over the course of being predominantly a cube player of any other format, right? Going from 60 card formats to 100 card formats to cube. I enjoy Magic very differently now than I did 4 years ago or 10 years ago, right? So I want to hear from people what makes you tick as a Magic player, and how did you fulfill yourself as a Magic player with the cubes that you drafted? What made you excited? What made you just love the cubes that you drafted? Give me the list. Give me the names of the cubes. I want to see them. I want to break them down. I want to play test them. I want to analyze them the whole 9 yards. I just want to see more and more data about the best event for that, right? CubeCon has got a gazillion cubes and a lot of players and so much information that so many people, both curators and players, can look at and really get so much value from. So that's what I want to get out of CubeCon.
And so I can get the sweet list for UberCubeathon 2025 as well, too. I'm actually already
Absolutely.
I'm starting to have communications with the store.
We're doing it.
And we're secretly working on it. Wink, wink.
The representation of Cube in general, right? We need to make more happen over here on the East Coast, right? You've got your Wisconsin, there's stuff going on the West Coast, and now we're going to keep doing what we're doing over here on the East Coast. So,
Heck yeah. All right. So, Stu, this was CubeCon. Let's just do it. Let's do J-Bro. Everybody say it same time. CubeCon! All right, let's take us to the socials, please.
All right, first of all, again, to all of our Patreons, Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Chris Singer, Nick LaPointe, Preston, and Sam McKenna. A big thank you to all of you guys for the ongoing support. Please go ahead and check out the Facebook drafting page at facebook.com/groups/MTGCube, where our resident host, Mr. Anthony Adams, tell us about that page.
It's doing great. Like we're almost encroaching 1,000 now. And conversations are going
It's incredible.
Insane.
It's incredible. So many cool conversations.
And our Discord is blowing up, my dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you love the show, we would truly appreciate give us a 5-star review on your chosen podcast platform. You can also use our altersleeves.com/UberCube affiliate link for 5% off your purchase, as well as our inkedgaming.com/UberCube affiliate link for all kinds of playmats, dice bags, mouse pads, large volume products available for your Magic experience. Find us on Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod, and you can also reach us via email if you've got a longer question or comment about our podcast or a cube or whatever. UberCubeMTGPodcast@gmail.com.
Or mouse mats.
Mouse mats.
Yeah,
that's
keep
legit.
going, keep going.
There is a mouse mat, you know. Again, patreon.com/UberCube if you want to support the show. Much love to all of you guys. And we're going to do what we always do here and say... Fighting out of the cube corner.
562, happy Cuban.